questions that are on fiqh issues, jurisprudential matters, or Islamic law, specific regarding fasting, and few, in fact, questions roamed around the obligation regarding fasting. If one does not make up their fast by the next month of Ramadan. So this, let's say last year, they missed some days and they did not make it up until this year, this month of Ramadan. What is their obligation? In that case, they have to pay what we call a fidya, which is to feed one person, and that is not a kafara. It's different to kafara. Kafara is when one is compensating for a sin. This is a little different. However, it's not recommended not to make it up before the next month of Ramadan. One should endeavor to make it up as soon as possible, in fact. If they don't make it up and they pay the fidya, do they still have to make up that day? Yes, they do still have to make up that day. The fidya is not to replace the fasting. The fidya is simply because they didn't make it in time before the next month of Ramadan. That's the time they're given عدة من أيام أخر until the next month of Ramadan. And if they don't make it up, that's when they pay the fidya. Nonetheless, they would still have to make up the day for sure. Again, in the same area, if one is unwell and unable to make it up, they pay the fidya. And if they can make it up after the month of Ramadan, they make it up. If they can never make it up, they don't have to pay a fidya again. Basically, let's say I missed last month and this month came, I still didn't make them, I pay the fidya. And then next month of Ramadan comes and I still haven't made the first set that I paid fidya for. There's no fidya again. However, again, anytime one is able to make them up, they would have to make them up, inshallah. If there are any questions, otherwise, inshallah, we'll proceed with the discussion we started. In fact, tonight is the second last night. I am a little behind schedule in terms of starting the next set or the next series. The second last night tonight, inshallah, on the topic of the passport over the Seerat. And some of you who were with us know clearly what is the passport over the Seerat. What does it take? Sorry. What does it take for us to gain admission or to get a passport that allows us to pass over the Seerat? And clearly from the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says it takes improving one's akhlaq, one's ethics and morality, and how they deal with people around them, with different things around them, not just people, but also akhlaq include how we are with ourselves, how we are with nature, and so on. However, the most apparent part of akhlaq is how we treat one another. And that is one part that we need to improve on. I did speak of the diseases of the heart that we need to clean. Why? Because the akhlaq stem from the heart. Basically, a clean heart displays good akhlaq. And we're not speaking of fakeness or you know, be showing something.
The quality of the internet is not there. You get cut off and your picture freezes once in a while.
Again, okay, I'm gonna have to change them. Sorry, I thought that was fresh voice. Sorry for the interruption. The akhlaq that we speak of are not just the appearance of how one behaves, rather what is in their heart that leads to their behavior. That is the focus. Because otherwise one may display something which is not really what they are and what it seems to be. For example, one may display that they are very humble in their salat. And it is our duty to be humble in our salat. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. One may display humbleness in their salat when they're around people. Yet they are not really humble. All they care about is for people to say, MashaAllah, he prays so well. As the the famous joke, I'm not sure based on a true story or not, but someone was very humble in his salat in the masjid. So some people were standing there praising him, saying, MashaAllah, he's praying so well. And, you know, he is very humble in his salat, MashaAllah, MashaAllah. And while he is in the middle of his salat, he turned around and he said, I'm fasting too. Some of you may have seen this. It was a video made once a while ago, basically. One's akhlaq is what comes from the heart. Generosity, what comes from the heart. And we're not speaking of the show off, riya. Rather, the pure heart. And if a heart is not clean, if it has not been cleansed from some of the diseases, then those akhlaq will not be there or they won't be genuine. Therefore, one cannot gain the passport over the salat. So we went through some of the diseases of the heart. And the last one I want to share, in fact, tonight, just a quick summary over them. We discussed hubb dunya, love of dunya, being the one of the most severe ones. رأس كل خطيئة. The hadith says it's the source of every sin or sinful act. And obviously a heart that is filled with the love of this world cannot have the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and care for akhirah. One cannot be in two opposite directions. And we explained that dunya is when one is looking at this world rather than the hereafter, not when he's looking at certain things in this world for the hereafter. For example, he wants wealth. Why? Because he wants to spend on his family. He wants wealth. Why? Because he wants to spend on the poor and needy. He wants to go to Hajj, do good deeds, and so on. That is definitely not love of wealth and love of dunya. Imam Rida alayhi salam, he says, this is from akhirah. This is love of akhirah. This is care for akhirah. The other disease that we discussed is the disease of the hardening of the heart. Why? And I mentioned clearly based on the ahadith that a heart that has hardened, has gotten to a level of qaswa or qasawa, that heart cannot gain any wisdom, cannot gain any, cannot learn anything, cannot improve. It's blocked. ختم الله على قلوبهم. That kind of a heart cannot improve, cannot be purified. Therefore, we need to make sure we prevent getting to the hard, to the very hard stage of the heart where it just blocks any goodness. And I mentioned that part of purification of that disease is that one cares for others, especially in this month. It is important that we try and be generous, giving. I'm not sure if you know people around who are unable to perhaps have a decent meal, but we're living in a world that definitely we are well informed of others, and we are capable of reaching them and helping them. We are facing a situation where, as a result of this disease and as a result of, in fact, the loss of jobs and people having to stay at home, many people are hungry. In many countries, there were reports and documentaries, in fact, that are documenting some of the severe situations of people who are, when they take food for them, they are basically fighting over the resources and the help that is coming, the aid that is coming. It is our religious duty in this month of Ramadan, especially those who are fasting. We know of Muslimin who are fasting in this month of Ramadan, yet they don't have much. And we need to help them to the best of our ability. That softens the heart in itself. That is one of the means of softening the heart and avoiding the hardening of the heart, inshallah. The other disease I mentioned is, or the two other ones that led Shaitan to lose or to miss out on a position that he had, or an opportunity, in fact, that he had, that made him the cursed one and made Adam, ala nabina wa alayhi wa alayhi salam, the chosen one. Al-kibru wal-hasad, arrogance and jealousy. And we need to purify our hearts from both of them. Arrogance, realizing that kibriya belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Who am I? If I have anything that I deem to be a good thing, it is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when it comes to jealousy, to realize that if God gave someone something, it is His decree and His wisdom. I cannot and shall not question His wisdom. We spoke of bukhl, or greed and stinginess, as one of the diseases. That again, the hadith says, La yadkhul al-jannah. One who has bukhl will not be admitted to paradise. Therefore, we need to make sure we purify our hearts from bukhl, and we train to be generous. We push ourselves, we test our limits, basically. Will I do it? Do I have it in me? If not, I push myself and train myself to the point that I become generous and purify from my own bukhl, inshallah. Tonight, the one I want to discuss is the most severe one and the worst in terms of its punishment. The ayat and riwayat regarding this one are very clear that this is by far the worst. What is it? It is none but nifaq. You might say, well, nifaq, munafiq, hypocrisy, hypocrites. This is far from us. How could it be us? Well, we need to be very careful, because if we don't take precautionary measures to prevent ourselves from getting into these diseases, if we're not already there, then if we are already somehow there in some stage or some levels of it, then we need to purify from it and clear our hearts from it. If we're not, we need to take preventative measures. Otherwise, if we do the things that cause it, we will get there. Wal-'ayadu billah. We seek refuge to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from getting to this disease, nifaq, إن المنافقين, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, munafiqeen are in the lowest level of hell. We have darajat in Arabic. Darajat refer to the levels in Jannah. Typically, daraj is when we try and ascend. However, when it comes to hell, they're not called darajat, rather they're darakat. إن المنافقين في الدرك الأسفل من النار. In the lowest level of hell, munafiqeen. You might ask, how come? What about the kafir? This guy at least shows iman. He displays iman. Yes, he has in his heart kufr, yet he is a mu'min or a Muslim. In the appearance, how come he's worse than the kafir? Because they are more dangerous than the kafir. Because they are exposed to truth, and they are more dangerous through their action. They actually weaken the faithful ones. They are the most dangerous ones in the society, those the munafiqeen or the hypocrites. In fact, the term nifaq is very interesting. If we look at the term itself, the term nifaq comes from nafq or nafaq, which both are very, very similar in a sense. It is to basically dig ways. In Arabic, they call the tunnel, they call it a nafaq. They say the mice and rats and these kinds of rodents, they make ways for themselves, hidden ways. You know, it may be right underneath your feet, under the ground where you're walking, but you don't see it. Why? Because they made it underground, so they are not seen. They are basically escape routes. You try and get them from one place, they go into the nafaq and so on. So a munafiq is hiding like a rat. That is it's very, in fact, very sad situation, very, very sad situation to be in. A munafiq is like a rat hiding and finding ways and finding escape routes. This is where the term comes from. And they are in the darak al-asfal. Why? Because they are the worst in the society. They ruin more than anybody else. A believer who's ignorant may cause some damage. A non-believer who is smart causes serious damage. In some cases, an ignorant friend could be worse than the smart enemy. This is based on some of the stories that, in fact, in the Persian literature, they have a story that the summary is Dushman dana behaz nadan doost, that a smart or wise enemy is better than a foolish friend. However, both of those cause harm. Now, which one causes more harm? We'll leave that to you or to the situations. However, the one that causes the most harm are these cunning, friend-looking hypocrite of characters. They are the worst in terms of the harm that they can make and the damage that they can create in the body of the Muslim Ummah and in any community. In any community, those people are the most dangerous people. They cause so much damage that sometimes you go into, and I have seen certain areas and certain communities, in fact, that one person in that community, and just so that people don't misunderstand, I'm not referring to this city. I have lived in many cities, many countries, and I have seen many communities. I have seen some of those characters or individuals that one or two or few of those individuals, they become the cause of the problems in the city, in the community, in the Muslim community, in the Shia community, in fact, they become the cause of division, they become the cause of trouble, they become the cause of every ill, every evil thing you could imagine. And you see like the people confused as a result. So let's dissect this disease, this very, very severe, and in fact, in terms of the akhirah, the worst of those diseases. I hope and I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that none of us have this disease, yet we need to prevent ourselves from getting there. Wal-'iyadhu billah. We seek refuge to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what are some of the signs of this disease? One of the, and I'm going through some of the signs based on the ayat of the Holy Quran. In some of the ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that وَإِذَا قَامُوا إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ قَامُوا كُسَالَى. They are lazy in their acts of worship. They don't have the heart, and their heart is not into it. You see them, they barely have the basically khuluq, as we say. They don't really enjoy it. They don't want to do it. It's just, okay, let's just get it over and done. That is one of the signs. If you feel lazy during the time of salat, I'm not saying that is by itself a sign of hypocrisy. That could lead to it. And these are the things we need to all make sure we watch for within ourselves. So symptoms, again, one, the ayah says, قَامُوا إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ قَامُوا كُسَالَى. They are lazy in their salat. Another one is what? The same ayah immediately says, يُرَاءُونَ النَّاسِ وَلَا يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. They are lazy in their salat and they're showing off. And they hardly remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Very little in their salat, in their ibadat. Very little. You may think, well, we stand up and pray, isn't it remembrance? No. A mind that is absent of salat, that salat is not accepted on a spiritual level. If I travel everywhere in my salat, I'm looking forward to a trip that I'm going to, and I'm planning the trip, or looking forward to whatever it is that I have in mind, and I'm planning the whole thing. And there was once a scholar who was reminded by perhaps Al-Khidr. He said this could have been Al-Khidr, because he said, what kind of salat is this? And then he says, why? He says, are you praying, or is he praying, or is he doing his backyard, fixing his backyard? That I'm going to get the plant and plant it in this corner, and I'm thinking, oh, is this the best corner, or is that a better place? And while salat is going. Unfortunately, oftentimes this happens to us. However, again, if we allow those things to continuously happen, if we don't fight them, kasal in salat, laziness in ibadat, or showing off that in front of people you show beautiful salat, when you're on your own, less, more shorter salat, quicker salat, less adhkar, less time in ruku' and sujood, and so on. All of this is part of riya. That is one of the signs, in fact, for these hypocrites. Again, I'm not saying that just having one of the signs means one is hypocrite, but it could lead to it. They are confused. مذبذبين. لا إلى هؤلاء ولا إلى هؤلاء. You think about people around you. Their situation is confused between the good and the evil. I may like to sit with people who are pious and good and pray and fast and do good, and they're in the masjid all the time. I also like the gathering of some people who go to certain places partying, and so whatever it may be, the kind of sinful acts that they're involved in. And I'm stuck between, I like this and I like this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that's part of the hypocrisy, or the symptoms of the hypocrites, or the signs of the hypocrites. That mudabdabin, confused. La ilaha ula wa la ilaha ula. Another one of them is that they are two-faced. تعرفهم في لحن القول. You know them by how they tell you something, but they tell someone else something else. So they're lying. They're not truthful. This is again one of their signs. In another ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when they come to the believers, قالوا آمنا وإذا خلوا إلى شياطينهم قالوا إنا معكم إنما نحن مستهزئون. This is a serious level of nifaq. That when they are with the believers, they say we believe. And when they go to the disbelievers, they say we are with you. We are just making a mockery of those people. They want to keep positions. I'm friends with these people, I'm friends with these people, and believer versus non-believer here. I'm not speaking of being friends with, mu'mineen in general. And yet, we see which one is more profitable. In the war situation, when it happened, they would wait, and Quran speaks of that situation where they wait and see who's winning to go to their side and say, we're with you. If the enemy is winning, they go to the enemy, they said, oh, we were actually weakening the believers against you. And if the enemy is losing, then they come to the believers and, oh, we're with you in this. This is again another one of their signs. They're two-faced. Another one is that fisq. وَكَثِيرٌ مِّنْهُمْ فَاسِقُونَ. Fisq is to commit sins without hesitation openly. A fasiq is, for example, I'll give an example and it'll become clear. Drinking alcohol is haram. Somebody has a weakness, let's say, and they perhaps used to drink before they knew, or somehow somebody before they became religious, they used to drink, and they decide that they don't want to. However, sometimes it's an addiction, it's difficult, and they, وَالْعَيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, we seek refuge to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they do it. They do it privately. They do it, they're ashamed of it. They don't want to do it. Another one is they just do it openly, repeatedly. There's no shame, there's no hesitation. That is again one of the signs. Now, I used alcohol. You can think of many things. One level of hypocrisy is that one thinks that they are Muslim with the Muslims, yet basic dress code or basic principles of Islam they ignore. Fasting the month of Ramadan, I can't really fast. It's just difficult for me, or my job doesn't allow me. And they openly eat, no hesitation, no shame, and so on. That is another one regarding being sinful and openly committing sins. Another one is that they have bukhl. We mentioned that last night, in fact, that وَالْمُنَافِقُونَ وَالْمُنَافِقَاتِ بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ يَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمُنْكَرِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمَعْرُوفِ. They enjoin evil and they forbid good, opposite of what they should be doing, and they withhold. They don't give. That is one of the also symptoms. And clearly, as I was mentioning, that the other one of them came that they advise opposite to the advice of the Prophet or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger and awliyaullah. The opposite. If the advice of the Prophet is, for instance, husband and wife, they should reconcile and be together, their advice would be the opposite. Why would you want to do that? You know, be free, live in this free world. That is one example. You could think of many other examples. Anytime you hear someone advising you to do something that the Prophet would have advised otherwise, or God has ordered otherwise, then clearly there are signs of hypocrisy there. Now, these are some of the symptoms. Again, this is a very severe, very serious disease, and I pray that none of us have it. However, we need to make sure we don't even allow the symptoms to be persisting within us. If we see any of them, immediately we need to treat them before that disease becomes serious. Wal-'iyadhu billah. Now, the causes. What are the causes of this disease? This is very, very important because it helps also with the remedies. The number one issue that we can say here in terms of a major cause of hypocrisy is the wrong companionship, wrong friends. The number one and the most significant part that perhaps cause of this disease or this problem is definitely the wrong people around you, wrong companions, wrong friends. You name it, wrong gathering that you sit in. Some people call it a baraza. I'm not saying wrong baraza, call it wrong, jalsa, wrong sahrat, whatever language, whatever culture you're part. If you are in the wrong circle of people, then that would influence us, and that is the number one cause of nifaq. Who are the wrong people? How do we know it? Well, look at their symptoms or some other things that a hadith also mentioned. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, إياكم ومجالسة الملوك وأبناء الدنيا. Never sit with the kings and the people who are caring for this dunya, أبناء الدنيا, people who only care for dunya. ففي ذلك ذهاب دينكم. That will destroy your faith. And it will give you نفاق ويعقبكم نفاقا وذلك داء دوي لا شفاء له ويورث قساوة القلب ويسلبكم الخشوع. That will lead sitting with people who are most concerned about dunya. People who, perhaps if you want to call it filthy rich, billionaires, I don't know, millionaires, only care for dunya, kings and the likes. Those people, the kind of people that whenever they sit, they're speaking of perhaps the material things, stock exchange, how the dollar, the gold, the silver, the value, all of these things, perhaps real estate, there's nothing that they talk about except business and making more money and more money and having this new gadget, new car, new technology that has come. There's no care or concern for akhirah. If you're in a gathering like this, then you are in the wrong gathering. Every gathering in the hadith, every gathering will become regretted on the day of judgment. Kullu majlisin. Every gathering you sit in, one would regret on the day of judgment unless there is the mention of the name of God and reminders from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt salawatullah wasalam. If a gathering is all about dunya, that gathering would lead to hypocrisy. He says, إِيَّاكُمْ وَمُجَالَسَةِ الْمُلُوكِ وَأَبْنَاءُ الدُّنْيَا فَفِي ذَلِكَ ذَهَابُ دِينِكُمْ. And what happens? How does it happen? يُعْقِبُكُمْ نِفَاقًا. It will make you have hypocrisy, and that is the disease that will bring the hardening of the heart. And it is the disease that will take away the humbleness. وَيَسْلُبُكُمُ الْخُشُوعِ. One cannot pray humbly at that point. One cannot have humbleness in ibadah at that point, because when one is around people who are all about dunya and they are arrogant, they influence him. قُلْ لِي مَنْ تُصَاحِبْ أَقُلْ لَكَ مَنْ أَنْتَ. Tell me who you befriend, I tell you who you are. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah wa salamu alayh. He says, therefore, the first and the most significant part part of the causes of the disease of hypocrisy is the friendship or companionship, wrong friends and companions. The other one is that oftentimes one has the lacking within themselves, and so they want to somehow portray themselves to be different, to be a better character, better figure. Again, lack of purification that has to do with arrogance, has to do with wanting to be better than others, has to do with jealousy. If those things are in the heart and one feels inadequate somehow, then that would lead to nifaq in the way that they interact with their friends and with the people, so that they can portray themselves to be the better ones. If they start, again, it starts little, it starts as a minor issue, it gets to the point that destroys the faith altogether. As the hadith says, ذَلِكَ ذَهَابُ دِينِكُمْ. The whole faith will be questionable eventually. That is the second cause of the disease of nifaq. And the last one is that one who does not have the response to certain theology, to ideologies. Now, if one is stuck in their way, this is why it's very important that as we grow in life and as we mature, we keep in mind that I could be wrong, I could be mistaken. What I believe today could be wrong. Maybe there is, something I've misunderstood, and so constantly search for truth. Why am I saying that? Because if we think we are perfect, we have reached the perfection, then Amir al-Mu'mineen says that that is the destruction of intellect. You're not allowing your intellect to move you forward. There's no progression anymore. That is regression in a sense, because time is passing. We're losing the opportunity to improve, but I cannot improve because I think I'm perfect. That is one major issue, that oftentimes, because we think we are, what I believe in, who I am, is 100% right. There's nothing wrong with my ideology, with my faith, with even my acts of worship. If anybody comes and proposes something, I don't want to accept it. Why? Because if I accept it, I'm saying that I was wrong all this time. Part of it is arrogance here. And a big part of it is that being, perhaps, especially when it comes from ancestry and so on, be having allegiance and love for parents and for ancestors more than the love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. قُلْ إِن كُنتُمْ إِن كَانَ آبَاؤُكُمْ وَأَبْنَاؤُكُمْ وَإِخْوَانُكُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if these things are more loved for you than in your heart, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His messenger, and striving in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you have to prepare yourself for a punishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So having this kind of mentality, that my father, subhanAllah, today as we were reciting this in the stories in Surah Yunus, the prophets, Nabiullah Nuh, then Nabiullah Hud, they tell their people, and the response is often, our fathers, we follow our fathers. We cannot go against all our fathers and our ancestors, and these are the great people. Oftentimes, this is what happens is one who realizes that there is some truth in what they're hearing. However, they cannot respond because they don't have the logic. And at the same time, they don't want to accept because of perhaps the arrogance or that wrong allegiance. Therefore, they will end up having hypocrisy. That would lead to a stage of nifaq, wal-'ayadu billah. Again, I say it, whatever you hold in terms of a position today, I'm not saying in terms of the necessities, like we cannot, I'm not definitely not suggesting that today I believe in God, okay, don't take it serious in case that changes. No, that is not what I'm suggesting. What I am suggesting is in terms of certain not non-essential or non-principal parts, okay? The principles also, we need to be clear on them. We cannot be doubtful. We cannot accept blindly. But anything else, we hold a position, okay, is this party a good party, or are they? Let's just give an example. In terms of politics, some people, their allegiance when it comes to the political parties is so blind that this is it. I am a Democrat no matter what. Even if the Democrats today are doing the worst thing. Now, some have benefits, and this is hypocrisy in itself. Some are blind, and that would lead to their hypocrisy. Some are doing it because that is how they get elected and so on. Some just follow blindly, and that at times, if they continue in that manner, at times they see certain realities. Okay, if I continue supporting this party, they're promoting evil acts, let's say. They're promoting something that is horrible, but I have to because I am a supporter of this party all my life. I cannot change. This in a religious perspective, and in general in life, this leads to levels of hypocrisy that could get to a level that is serious, even in terms of our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wal-'ayadu billah. Now, the remedies. How do we purify from levels of hypocrisy? Let's hope that we don't have the serious levels that have gone as far as claiming faith when we are enemies, wal-'ayadu billah, if that is perhaps if somebody is at that level, we seek refuge to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from that, and we seek forgiveness for them and pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help them return. Nonetheless, we need to make sure we look at remedies of each of those symptoms that I mentioned earlier, so that we do not end up in a severe disease, which is hypocrisy, that is في الدرك الأسفل من النار. The first number one remedy and solution for it is reflecting on the ayat. So many ayat of the Holy Quran speak of hypocrisy, of the symptoms, and also of some of the signs that led to that, or some of the sins perhaps that led to hypocrisy. Reflect on those ayat. And again, we're living in a very good time in a sense, because we have access to resources. Online resources are there. Find books on hypocrisy. Search for the tafasir on the ayat regarding the hypocrites in the Quran, and find those and reflect on them. Look at their characteristics that are perhaps listed or described by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran. So that's the first one, reflecting on the ayat regarding hypocrites and hypocrisy, reflecting on the ayat in general and regarding this disease. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, it has come to you maw'adha. Today we recited this ayah. Tonight it was one of the ayat that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought to you a maw'adha, an advice, a word of advice, admonishment. And it is also shifa'un lima fi sudur. And I mentioned that shifa'un lima fi sudur, it is not referring to the physical heart and the physical body. Shifa in the Quran, most significantly, although it may have, and it does have shifa in general, because our body the body and soul are very well connected. Our spiritual state affects our body. If we have a strong faith, our body is better, it's healthier, our even immune system is better. Therefore, there is an effect, definitely. However, the most important part of shifa and cure of the Quran is for our heart, for the spiritual journey. Reflect on the ayat, shifa'un lima fi sudur. Reflect on the punishment. وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الْمُنَافِقِينَ وَالْمُنَافِقَاتِ وَالْكُفَّارَ نَارَ جَهَنَّمَ خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا هِيَ حَسْبُهُمْ وَلَعَنَهُمُ اللَّهُ وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ مُقِيمٌ. They are with kuffar together, and they are worst, in fact. في الدرك الأسفل من النار. And he says, يا أيها النبي جاهد الكفار والمنافقين واغلظ عليهم ومأواهم جهنم وبئس المصير. Such torment or severe torment or painful punishment we cannot afford. Therefore, we need to make sure we purify from hypocrisy. In terms of the theory. Practically, what can I do? Perhaps if I ask you the question, you will answer me already. Very obvious, very clear. The first one is make sure you are in the good circle of people. There's a hadith, last night I spoke about the bakhil. There's a hadith that says, do not look at, in fact, one of the signs of or symptoms of the hypocrites is bukhl, greed and stinginess, not giving. The opposite of a mu'min. A mu'min gives, and a mu'min is generous. One of the hadith says, do not look at the face of the bakhil. Today we read a hadith that says, do not sit in the gathering of those, the kings and the people who are arrogant in their lifestyle, lavish lifestyle, and they're arrogant, and they perhaps think that they are above others and so on. Such gatherings, they bring, in fact, in the hadith, it says, yurithu. It makes you inherit some of their evil characteristics. Wal-ayadu billah. A bakhil, looking at them, it brings that, or it may be contagious in a sense, that disease of stinginess and greediness and so on. One starts developing those characteristics without even realizing. So here the opposite is to sit in the gathering of the humble people, to sit in the gathering of the pious people. For instance, in the ahadith, we are told mujalasat al-ulama, to sit with the scholars, with those whom, when you sit around them, they're reciting for ayat and riwayat, and they are humble. I'm not speaking of scholars who, or people who have knowledge, but their knowledge does not display in their action, because that is not, definitely not a gathering that is beneficial. The one who has knowledge and their knowledge reflects itself in their action. That is important, that you sit with those people. Such gatherings are are part of the remedies for hypocrisy. Stay away from the wrong gatherings and sitting with the right people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran, in many ayat, He says regarding the hypocrites to stay away from them. To His messenger, He says, لا تصل على أحد منهم مات أبدا. Don't even pray on any of their deceased ones. Somebody dies from the hypocrites, don't pray on them. ولا تقم على قبره. Don't stand at their grave. إنهم كفروا بالله ورسوله وماتوا وهم فاسقون. They were transgressors. They died as transgressors. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in another ayah, He says, فَلَا تَتَّخِذُوا مِنْهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءَ حَتَّى يُهَاجِرُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. Don't befriend them. Family members, relatives, whoever they might be. Don't befriend them unless they are willing to migrate for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That their move was a migration at that time, that their sign. Today, think of it as migration from one state to another. If they are transgressing, if they are sinning, if they are living a certain lifestyle that is sinful, whatever state they're in, until and unless they change, don't sit with them. فَلَا تَتَّخِذُوا مِنْهُمْ. Don't befriend them. فَأَعْرِضُوا عَنْهُمْ إِنَّهُمْ رِجْسٌ. Turn away from them. They are filth, and their place is the fire. Because of their actions again. Many ayat. هُمُ الْعَدُوُّ فَاحْذَرْهُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Munafiqun, He says, they are the enemy. Be careful. Be very cautious of them. قَاتَلَهُمُ اللَّهُ أَنَّا يُؤْفَكُونَ. And many ayat. So you realize that the most important remedy when it comes to cleaning our hearts from hypocrisy is to stay away from hypocrites and to sit with the believers. That is the most important remedy. And I said it is important also to reflect on the ayat of the Holy Quran. And the last one is to constantly look for the symptoms and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to clear your heart from the symptoms. For example, and the last one I will share, inshallah, in the what symptoms we mentioned, that they don't get up for salat unless they are lazy. وَإِذَا قَامُوا إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ قَامُوا كُسَالَى يُرَاءُونَ النَّاسِ. When they get up for salat, they are lazy. In dua Abi Hamza, subhanallah, this dua, amazing dua, Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, he asks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to change, to help him change from that status. Or he complains. Now he is not asking for himself, he is teaching you and I. He complains to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Mali, kullama, what is wrong with me, Ya Allah? Every time I want to get up for salat, ألقيت علي نعاسا إذا أنا صليت وسلبتني مناجاتك إذا أنا ناجيت. You make me sleepy when I get up for prayers. You take away from me that whispering dua, that is that very intimate dua and supplication with you when I want to do the supplication. This dua is basically in a method, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a method that is most respectful. Like the dua of Nabiullah Musa ala nabina wa alayhi salam. When he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he didn't ask him, he says, Rabbi inni lima anzalta alayya min khayrin faqir. Oh Allah, I am so needy of what you have brought down to me in terms of the goodness and blessings that you have brought down. I am so needy of it. I am a faqir. I'm needy of you, the goodness that is with you that you have. So he's already thanking God for the things that he has given him. He's acknowledging him, acknowledging it and thanking him for it. And at the same time, indirectly, he is asking him for the khair. But he doesn't specify, he doesn't tell him, Ya Allah, I want this specific khair. And that happened in the story, in the incident where the daughters of Shu'aib were watering or were trying to water their sheep, and they were waiting for everybody else. So he came, he asked them, they told him, we wait for others. So he did it for them, he helped them, he got the sheep and watered them for them. And when they left, he went to a shade and he had this beautiful dua with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the فَتَوَلَّى إِلَى الظِّلِّ. And he went in the shade, he sat down. And in other words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing this for a reason. In other words, he didn't just ask casually. No, he went somewhere comfortable in the shade. When he's comfortable, he is now speaking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intimately. He's saying, Ya Allah, you've given me all these goodness and I'm in need of your goodness that you give. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him through that a job and a wife, everything that we often want in life, or a young man perhaps would want in his life, that he wants a job, a home, a wife. All of that happened for him through that dua. If we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like Imam Zain al-Abidin teaches us, that complain to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Mali, what is wrong with me, Ya Allah? What is it with me? That every time I want to enjoy my salat, I say to myself, now I want to pray properly. Then I come to pray, and then this obviously it is not that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is oppressing. Wallahu bidhallamin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is never oppressing. Nonetheless, when we ask him, there is something wrong with us. He will, through his mercy and through his grace, he will cure our hearts through our sincere and genuine dua. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to purify our hearts from nifaq. طهر قلبي من النفاق وعملي من الرياء. Our hearts from nifaq, our acts from showing off, and our tongues from lying and not telling the truth. وَلِسَانِي مِنَ الْكَذِبِ. Our eyes from khiyana, from betrayal. You know everything, Ya Allah. You know what is in our mind. You know what is our intention. Ya Allah, sincere prayers of mu'mineen and mu'minat on this night of the month of Ramadan. Answer our dua, legitimate hajat, answer them. Mu'mineen and mu'minat who are unwell, grant them the quick recovery. Mu'mineen and mu'minat who are in difficulty, grant them the quick relief. And those who passed away from our gathering, grant them your mercy with the rewards of Al-Fatiha ma'a salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
طيب الله أنفاسكم شيخنا. Thank you so much.
وإياكم إن شاء الله. We're waiting.
Hello.
Assalamu alaikum.